Dear Surface Book, can we still be friends? What's up, Team KBA? One Tech Traveler here. So I've had my Surface Book for nearly 5 years now, and it's starting to show signs that it's nearing the end of its days. And with that, this is kind of like a personal journal of just how my Surface Book has been with me all this time since I kind of started my journey with One Tech Traveler, and then also talking about my next steps going forward, some of the good stuff about what I've enjoyed on the book, the first generation, and some of the things that haven't been so good, what Microsoft have tried to do in the future generations and whether they resolve them or not. And overall, as an answer to whether we can still be friends, why the Surface Book might not be my next laptop. So here we have it. This is my 5-year-old Surface Book that you can see here. For 5 years, it actually still looks really good, and that's kind of a testament to what Microsoft have done with the hardware engineering of it. It's super sturdy, and you can imagine throughout 5 years of traveling from places like Hong Kong, Norway, Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, Thailand, UK, the list goes on. It's been with me everywhere from my very first campaign up until now, and throughout all of that time, it's held up, and that's probably one of the best things I like about this. It's not just a premium device that's pretty expensive, that looks good. It's one that also really handles a lot of damages, bumps, falls, and it's had plenty of those across that entire time. And it's also landed in different parts, whether that's on the spine of the fulcrum hinge, over on the back, and also on the front. There's some faint scratches on this magnesium material, but for the most part, it's pretty clean. As you can see, we have one kind of small dent here from when it's landed awkwardly on something fairly sharp, so that left kind of an ingrained like dent here, but for the most part, it's pretty good. Just your general cleaning. We get over to the back, and obviously it looks a bit more aged than what you would normally expect, and that's kind of my sort of rough taping of the soft rubber feet that have come undone over the years. So while I could use like super glue to make it better and be a bit more cleaner, these tape do the jobs. Then we go onto the fulcrum hinge. It's definitely easy to pick up grime and dirt. The fulcrum hinge is kind of one of the signature styles of what makes the Surface Book, and with that it has little grooves where dirt and dust can get trapped inside. However, it does make it super durable in the way that it connects the clipboard, which is the screen, and the base itself. So reason why I kind of went for the Surface Book in my early days, for disclosure, I was working at Microsoft for a couple of years across finance, business intelligence, and then also partnered on Surface, Xbox, and the commercial business group. So naturally, I had an affinity to Microsoft products, and this was when the Surface Book was announced. I've had the Surface RT, the Surface Pro, seen the evolution, and the Surface Book kind of was that pivotal change from when Microsoft started to really innovate on their Surface computing devices and make them great. Now, when I was looking to make a big purchase on my laptop, I kind of wanted something that did as many things, but the key things were it had touchscreen, it looked nice, aesthetically pleasing, had solid performance, but fundamentally the ability to detach and use it as a tablet and then use it as a full-blown laptop. So the Surface Pro was kind of the tablet version of that, where you can attach the type cover, but I wanted more performance and wanted something as a laptop, and then the Surface Book came along. So kind of a no-brainer, but it is super expensive. And for me personally at that time, I had to get whatever model I could, and I made some compromises along the way. And that was that kind of experience in the sacrifice of performance. So roughly it was like £1,600 at the time. That got me an Intel Core i5 dual-core mobile processor, 8GB of RAM, and 256GB SSD storage. It also has a dedicated NVIDIA GeForce 640M at the time, but it was dedicated nonetheless. So for me, it was the best of everything that I wanted it to try and do. In the beginning, awesome. Like, I love the experience. I love the way it looks. It is 13.5 inches in size, pretty weighty, but not uncommon for this kind of laptop size, coming in around less than 2 kilograms. And it's pretty slim from both the base and the screen. What was different is, of course, you can attach this and the way that it's fundamentally set up. So whereas you normally have all the CPU stuff in the base, it's actually the dedicated graphics here. And then behind the screen is where you had all of the main components. So there's some good stuff and not so good stuff about that. Firstly, we'll touch on the best parts why I like the Surface Book. I think the Pixel Sense display, 3:2 aspect ratio, 3200 resolution was really nice. The touchscreen is smooth, feels great. I've had, probably one of the best touchscreen experiences on a Windows laptop with the Surface Book. It also gives you much more headroom on the vertical space, so great for productivity and as a content creator, being able to see more, get more from your windows, more screen estate without being too big. The Surface Book was pretty nice. One of the downsides of what we got from this sort of setup was that while the typing, like the base, is really cool to the touch, mainly because it's made of magnesium, but also means that while you're typing, you don't feel it heat up as you are pushing the performance. A lot of that heat is generated behind the screen, so caused a little bit of concern considering it's right behind the screen. Thermal throttling wasn't seen so much unless I really pushed it high for long periods of time, and over the years that has become more prominent as the thermal paste has slightly reduced. But I think that's also fundamentally what restricts the Surface Book on giving more performance, and ultimately why I think the Surface Book is not going to be my next laptop. Some of the other things that I like about it: typing experience is awesome. 1.4mm travel keys, which you see here. I also have like some Korean stickers on it because I type in Korean and English. So hopefully I'll probably get a Korean model of my next laptop so that it's all integrated in one, because it's definitely a nice looking laptop. We have fans just underneath the screen and then also perimeter that surrounds the screen. And it had all the bells and whistles. I think one of the big parts for creators was it has a memory card SD reader. So being able to transfer straight from the camera without needing to connect it is very easy on the workflow. And I think for those who kind of wanted the best of Windows at that time, premium hardware and solid performance would find that in the Surface Book. You also enjoyed the ability to detach for clipboard and use the pen for documents and so forth. Over the generations, Microsoft have improved the sensitivity of the screen for better use cases, artists, graphic designers. I don't really push it that hard, but I definitely appreciate being able to have a more refined, precise touchscreen when I am editing, especially zoomed in. Some of the things that aren't so great is that same fulcrum hinge. So while it is a signature part of the Surface Book, it does have some screen wobble, which you kind of expect and isn't too bad compared to those which have a thinner screen. But considering that is the main connection point to everything that powers the Surface Book and the dedicated graphics card, I've definitely found intermittent connections where if I'm rendering a video and I slightly adjust the screen like this, it will actually disconnect the screen. Like the connection to the dedicated graphics is gone. The editing software closes down, and then I've kind of lost all of that time of it processing. So that one's kind of been the biggest thing that I felt in my workflow. And I know Microsoft have tried to resolve that over the generations of Surface Book 2 and 3, but I still hear it's still happening from time to time. So that's kind of a fundamental issue with the way they've set it up. They've tried to address it, but it's not uncommon to come across that. And then the next thing, and probably the biggest thing now that I've outgrown what I was doing 5 years ago, demanding more like live streaming OBS software, and just wanting to use better software to unlock more effects and creativity, is really just price versus performance. Now, that being said, I did get the Intel Core i5. Looking back, probably if I stretched to an Intel Core i7, I would have gotten a little bit more from it, but we are still stifled from that okay, but not groundbreaking graphics card at the time, and it's still being a mobile processor. Nowadays, the gaming category is really pushing more, and they are starting to look better too, challenging sort of the dimensions that we get from the Surface, but giving that full grunt of the latest AMD Ryzen and Intel Core, i7, i9 that aren't restricted to the mobile performance that you would get. We also have unlocked new series within the Surface Book since then, like the Surface Laptop, the Surface Laptop Go, the Surface Go 2, the Surface Pro X. They're all trying to fill in different things, and now we see, like, performance-wise, there's starting to be some little differentiation between them. The Surface Book could definitely be pushing the envelope more with providing a much more beefier type of dedicated graphics unit, and maybe, more of the higher cores and faster performance of the processors from the laptop. But again, fundamentally, it is kind of restricted by this setup. Everything is behind the screen, which means there's only so much that they can do, and amount of like hardware space that they can add much more power using CPUs, thermal pasting to keep that cool, and the amount of noise that it's generating. Like 5 years on, I'm pretty much using an external fan to heat directly in the center where the CPU is, just to keep it cool enough that it will render a video. It's kind of to be expected, as it's been 5 years now. But again, it just shows sort of the constraints and limitations that Microsoft having to work with this design for the Surface Book. So whether we see that or kind of innovation is left to be seen, but I'm kind of hoping we will. And I think overall that's kind of why the Surface Book may not be my next laptop. I want more performance, more graphics capabilities than what it's been allowing me to do, even though I love all the great stuff around it, the typing, the touchscreen, the writing experience. The webcams on these are still one of the best on the markets built in, compared especially gaming laptops, that don't have webcams. Here with the pandemic, Zoom, Skype, whatever kind of video call messaging app you're using, like, you get really good quality here, no washing, no fading. I don't look like I'm softened or plastic like a doll. So this one, I really like how 5 years on, those webcams are very strong, and what separates Microsoft for productivity or business use. But for anything more, for creators especially, I felt kind of the limits and constraints and made that compromise 5 years ago. If I was to make the same decision now up until the next 5 years, while I'm always welcome to Microsoft providing something more meatier and beefier with performance, until then, I think my next laptop is going to be moving away from the Surface family. So it's been an awesome road. Thanks a lot for all of the memories, Surface, and definitely going to be using it up until it fully closes itself and is left on the shelves to finish up before I pursue my next laptop. And hopefully look forward to sharing that journey of what my new laptop will be. So thanks a lot for joining me, Team KBA. You can find my full 5-year written review of the Surface Book on my website, so check it out at onetechtraveler.com. If you have your own experiences about how your own Microsoft Surface device has been over the years, whether it's lasted as long or more than 5 years, or whether you've had some few issues along the way across the Surface Book or other devices, or even your thoughts about what Microsoft can do with the next Surface Book, feel free to leave it down in the comment section below. Thanks a lot, Team KBA. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, keep being awesome. Peace.